gonna steal all side, ride me, baby. I ain't never gonna stop. Come on now, baby. Ride me straight to the top. Yeah, straight to the top.
Alrighty. Bad ideas, good stories. Number 15. 1, 2, 3, clap. Alright.
How is it going, a dude?
Good. It's been a couple weeks.
Yes.
We took a week off just to take care of life stuff. And yeah, I guess we can't chronologically figure out how long we've been doing this. And episode 15, it's just over
16 or 17?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Give or take. So how you been? What's been
Not
new?
bad, man.
What's shaking?
Yeah, not bad. Like I said, lots of annoying things happening in my personal life lately and work life, but I don't want to complain about that. So let's move past.
I was noticing, it's funny, I've been watching with my animus class, they were talking about decompression from social media and how he goes on detoxifies from social media for periods of time, like go for a full week where you're not on the computer and you're not on your phone and you're not on any media. And you start to smell things and listen to things and notice things. And I think I noticed that on a podcast, at least. I talk a lot about current events that happen to me in my internet world and my internet social circles and political or spiritual or whatever. And my partner even mentioned this. She's like, well, if this stuff causes you so much stress and it's on the internet, what would happen if you just stepped away from the internet? Would you know about all these child trafficking rings? Would you know about all these people getting furious about it? Would you know about all the latest anti-vaxxer, anti-maskers? Would you even care if you're just busy living your life? So, yeah, it's something to consider. Yeah.
Well, and generally you don't then.
Yeah.
Right? As soon as you're busy with something else. But it's occupying the space where you're not doing something and it's pure aggravation in digital form. Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's funny too because I was on vacation last week and I still that was the point, was to kind of have more time, spend time on the beach, have fun, and was doing that, but still kept getting dragged back into the digital world because I'd have to do something on my fucking phone and deal with some other bullshit and
it ends up being your connection to work, to your social network, to my family. If I'm away, that's how my kid gets a hold of me.
Yeah.
Is texting, So if I'm out of service, I'm kind of concerned if everything's okay. But I don't know. I grew up in the 80s where you come back when the street lamps are on. You know what I mean? And otherwise, if you're not back by this time the street lamps are on, we're sending out a posse to find you and you're going to be in trouble for it, know? And it seemed, at least in my neighborhood, very rarely did people go missing.
right?
Yeah, I guess. But when I'm on the internet, it seems like it's happening everywhere all the time. Like every kid in the world will go missing if they're not supervised for 5 minutes. Every single second of the day, they need those GPS trackers. Otherwise, they could be taken by the child traffickers. They're out there everywhere, behind every rock at every mall.
I think flags would be more effective. You get them those little go-kart flags, GPS trackers. I can't see that from a distance.
Remote triggered flares that
now
shoot up in the air.
Now we're talking.
Oh, mom's mad.
I almost. Okay, so what I was just thinking was cool. Let's trick out our children. But then I thought of that television show, Pimp My Ride, and then I was like, no, wait a minute. What were we just talking about? We were trying to get away from Pimp My Children.
5 minutes in, and it's already getting dark.
Yeah, right. Let's keep things light.
Yeah,
Pimping children.
Yeah. No.
But that's just it. I imagine. Well, a lot of my worldview is molded by this stuff that I choose to engage with on social media. The people I choose to follow, the accounts I choose to follow, and it's funny. I think it was 6 or 7 years off Facebook. I had Instagram and I was involved a lot in the fetish community on fetish websites and stuff like that. And so it was weird. So my worldview had a lot to do with tattooing and ordeal ritual and obviously sexy time kink stuff and those communities of people. And that was sort of what became my norm. My topics of conversation really revolved around sexuality and endurance and art. Right?
This is what you're seeing.
Yeah, because that was what occupied my reality. And then what ended up happening is I signed back up for Facebook and I was smacked in the face with how many racists I was friends with that I wasn't aware were racists, mostly with Islamophobia. That was the big thing when I got back on. Being gone for 7 years, all of a sudden all these people I thought I knew were very anti-Muslim. They were very... They had lots of ideas on things that I really didn't agree with, and I'm like, holy fuck! I see you every day on the street, and I didn't know this side of you. And actually, it's funny because they got the mirror image where all of a sudden I got on Facebook, and they didn't know my political side, which I'm pretty opinionated. I've got a hard line on a lot of right and wrong ethical stuff, but they didn't know that about me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it's interesting how people use social media. I was actually thinking that a little bit earlier today. I was like, what do people think they're doing when they get onto Facebook and they put that shit up? You know, like, who is your audience? Who do you think you're talking to? Is this a diary entry you're doing right now for where it's for you and you're just pouring your shit out and you want to get it out? Is this some sort of persona that you want to perpetuate for everybody else so they can think you are this thing? Are you trying to virtue signal? Are you trying to educate people? You know, because a lot of it's like, I can't think of the specific example. Oh, I know what it was. It was somebody talking about, somebody posted something about Walmart not letting people in without masks in the very near future. And somebody made the comment, well, there's a business I'm not going to shop at. Like everybody else is doing,
Oh,
right?
shit, you're going to avoid Walmart.
I just remember thinking, like, it's so
Who
fucking,
avoids
like,
Walmart?
I understand even having that thought, but like even saying that sentence out loud almost seems fucking like a waste of time. And then taking the effort to, you know what, I'm logging into fucking Facebook and I'm going to tell everybody that I'm not going in there if they're going to. Why? What is the point? Just to be heard?
See, I wonder. Exactly. You know, when I got on there, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to be a contrary opinion to a lot of the racist stuff that I heard. And that was my first little while.
Like you kind of want to educate people.
That was kind of my thing. I wanted to engage and, like, you know, bounce ideas. Hey, I know you think this, but have you considered this? And I started off pretty subtle about it. And I'm like, hey, what about this? And what about that? And then I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to actually become a pundit for this other idea. And I started joining up with these groups, and I started like, oh yeah, this is like one group that I follow is what is it? Is this conservative erotica? And, and so they post.
I can just fucking picture, hey, it's like we're cutting food stamps. That's the shit.
Kind of, yeah, exactly. You get the play. But and then there was another one was is this the rights fabled memeing ability? And so what they would do is they would just repost right-wing memes and right-wing stuff, and so well, at least this was my mindset. So I knew what the other side was saying. Sure. And I was very interested in that oppositional research. Yeah. But at the same time, my feed, and then I would also have libertarian and left-wing guys that are like saying what I would consider more rational ideas. Mm-hmm. But my feed was just inundated with this political stuff all the time, and I was getting frustrated, and I needed to comment. So I would see this crazy meme stuff from these right-wing conspiracies and these right-wing, you know, selfish sons of bitches out there. And then I would just go on my feed and vent my opinions of these politics that were coming in. Sure. But my friends didn't see the rest of my feed. They just saw Pat being the crazy political...
What's he going on about this again? You're like, because this is all he's been looking at all goddamn day.
Yes, this is all that's in my feed. You guys aren't the only thing in my feed. There's these groups, there's these fucking lunatics about, like, shutting down abortion and, like, banning, like, gay people from getting married and, like, you know, conversion therapy and all this crazy stuff. That's in my feed all the time. So I just want to say something about it. And then people think that that's where my head's at all the time, when realistically it's not. It's not. That's just what I'm commenting on shit that's popping up.
There, what you're saying, like, that's one of my big problems with social media in general, is like no one really fucking necessarily knows what the intention is of whoever's posting it. Mm-hmm. You could just be trolling, you could just be fucking around, you could be truthful, you could be honest, you could be fabricating the whole thing, you know. And there's almost no way to tell, and there's almost no real consequences until we act on whatever that thing is that's said. But it just keeps feeding this fucking weird narrative.
So if you're out at the campfire or the lake and you're all sitting around a table playing cards or dice or just watching the fire, and you start saying the same shit that you would on your feed, it's a conversation. People might disagree, but it's very polite. It's like, well, really, man, I kind
of that's the missing part, right? The interconnectivity. Like, you're doing it. Maybe that is what people think they're doing. They're having a conversation, but you miss all the nuance and the tone and the subtlety of what this is between you and I when you do it over a fucking message board.
Mm-hmm. You can be in a rush, and so you say 3 words that you think are blunt and to the point, but somebody else reading that would be like, is that ever rude? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's no polite angle, nuance.
And I feel a lot of people, when they see shit like that, they take it as it's meant for them. Even if it never was, it was meant for them. And then right away, it hits something that they're like, well, you don't know this about my past. And it's like, I don't even know who you are, let alone know that about your past. Why would I? And then it's like, well, then why would you assume that you could say this and it wouldn't hurt somebody? And it's like, because I don't fucking know you, man. That's why. It wasn't for you. And I think that's almost like the core of it. Like, again, art, comedy, that kind of shit. People that get offended by it, it's like, well, it's not for you then. You know what I mean? Unless the person comes out with the Gigi Allen, I'm here to fucking offend.
Yeah.
This is my art, and fuck you, I'm disgusting. You know what I mean? Like, that's a different thing, and I get that. But again, then it's just not for you. That's like the most extreme example of that, I think.
Well, I don't think it's the most extreme.
Well, okay, fair enough.
Like,
fair enough,
but like
fair enough.
Gigi
a pretty
Allen
fucking extreme example.
He's out there.
Yeah.
He's out there. Well, he is the anti-hero.
Yeah.
He is like the you've got the hero, the white knight, and then he is the black knight. I'm flinging poop at you. I'm cutting myself. I'm getting in fights at gigs. There's black metal bands like Gorgoroth. They've got like crucified, naked, bloody women on stage, and they've got like pigs' heads on spikes and fire when they're playing. Like, it's really gory, like, visceral, challenging shit. They're intentionally playing the anti-hero. And if you're interested in engaging with the energy or the content of the anti-hero, fucking A, feel free to go do that. And I think people should have a right to do that.
Yeah. Oh,
But
I totally agree. But that's what I'm saying. Like, when people get offended by shit, it's like, well, that means it's not for you then. That's the intent.
Oh, fuck.
It's making it for somebody.
Okay, it's funny because I wrote this down. I wanted to talk about it. And I think maybe I'm using the wrong terms a lot when I talk about cancel culture. Because there's a legitimate need for cancel culture where if there's like a big platform and somebody's doing really toxic shit and they're hosting this stuff on a platform, well, maybe that platform needs to get canceled if this guy's really doing toxic shit. We're boycotting. It used to be called a boycott. Yeah. We're boycotting your product, your program, whatever it is. That's okay. That makes sense. Cancel culture, boycotting makes sense to me. But I think there's a new development that's coming out, which I want to call shame culture, where I don't like something you did, so I'm going to gather up my posse and we're going to shame you for what we perceived that you did that was offensive. Or I'm going to say, I'm offended by what happened over here. Hey, all my friends, I've been offended. Let's all round up. And I'm going to out the person that offended me, regardless objectively whether this person is really doing offensive shit. But they offended one individual. So let's all shame them for this thing that they did. And case in point, there's this the scenario that actually got this on the forefront for me. There's this tattooer in town, or she was from town. She opened up a safe space tattoo shop in town because she felt tattoo culture was too aggressive. It was dominant by cis-het males that were aggressive and toxic, so she wanted to create the safe space. And I'm like, who are you? Who apprenticed you? You're now interjecting this. You're putting something on tattooing that really wasn't there, but you were offended by it, so you're saying it's offensive. Whatever, she moved away. She went to Vancouver. So now she's in Vancouver. She's tattooing in Vancouver. And recently on our feeds, or in my feed, it popped up, look at this toxic individual. They're sexualizing their clients in order to sell their art. And she went on, she sent private messages and posted his private responses as like a public feed saying, where are the women of size on your feed? I also noticed that you don't have people of color on your feed. Does that mean that you are fat phobic and a racist? And he's like, who are you? And so she's in Vancouver, and this artist is in Toronto on the other side of the country. So she rounds up her 7,000 followers. We need to out this person as being a toxic member of the tattoo community. So I'm like, well, let's take a look at this guy's portfolio. I click on it, and admittedly, it kind of reminds me of like the 1980s style Playboy photos where like there's a lot of like conventionally attractive women showing off a lot of flesh with a little tattoo down the side or lower back, or full nudes where like they have a full frontal tattoo kind of going across there. In my mind, you don't need to have these fully nude, quote unquote sexy women to sell your tattoos, but I also understand the other side where sex sells. And if you build it, the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. Mm-hmm. So if you want to do those tattoos, you advertise that content. Yeah. Now, if you don't...
and to me in that situation, this is the Vancouver person is someone who is using this platform now to do what they would never want done to them. They would never want someone to see them creating a safe space specifically for people that they feel like are maligned, and then treat like that is exclusionary. What do you mean? What about for the rest of us who don't need a safe space? I can't come into your shop then because I'm of the oppressive thing. You know what I mean?
You've just decreed me oppressive
Exactly
or
right.
toxic.
So they would never want that for themselves, right? But they're willing to do it to this person when the whole point of equality is that they can do that and you can do this. And if your thing has more value and there is a need for more safe spaces, and you're right, it is a toxic environment and it needs to be purged, then by creating a place where that can happen, you'll become the monopoly then because you're the only one doing it.
That's a good point.
Or you're going to spawn a bunch of other ones. That's the change you want to see kind of shit,
You
right?
shouldn't need to have to shame somebody out of business. If their model is passe, if their
Fucking right.
model
That's
is
what I'm
no
saying.
longer holds water,
Yep.
it'll evolve itself out. He'll
Yep.
get less and less clientele and he won't do it anymore. You don't need to do the call out culture. Just like if this like bubble wrapped safe space tattoo environment isn't going to hold water, it's going to fade out. I don't need to necessarily
and what's
call it
interesting
out.
is this almost all the examples I can think of and you're mentioning are all art related. This is an art world. This is music. This is comedy. This is tattooing. This is art culture.
And it's trying to be politicized.
That's it. These are already people that don't have a regular perspective on the fucking world, or they wouldn't make art in the way that was captivating and interesting to you in the first place. If they thought like you and looked like you and did everything you did, they'd do the shit you do. And they don't. They do something different because they're fucking different. And then their art can fucking exist, I think, without all that other bullshit. Like, I don't know why the personality of the artist, like Von Dutch, why the fuck does that matter for the art to live on?
Yeah, well, you should be able to remove the art from the artist. You should. You can look at something and say, this is a beautiful writing. Bukowski was apparently one of the most like atrocious human beings that you could find. But apparently his books, I'm not a big Bukowski fan. Great writer. But this is what I hear it from good people, smart people tell me it's
From smart people.
Smart people tell me it's good stuff. So I told her, walk with your feet. Don't look at it. Don't go there. Yeah. If you don't want, everybody on that portfolio was consenting to be there. Yeah. So not only that, you're pulling the white moral knight, the Christian crusader attitude of you have to go save the consenting individuals from themselves.
Fucking rights. Yeah, you're saving these poor maligned women who've been used as sex objects when that's not how you end up in a tattooer's catalog.
Well,
because everybody can see it and you can come back and go, wait a minute, what are you doing? You put my pictures in here, you piece of shit?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Everybody in town's going to know. You agreed to it every fucking time. That's
they
how
probably
it works.
signed consent forms for the and it's not just, hey, you're in my shop and you're half naked. These are like straight up photo shoots with these people, and it really kind of bothers me. If you don't like it, don't look at it. If you don't want to do that, don't participate. You don't like the artist, don't get tattooed by them. The same way, I won't go into the bubble wrap tattoo shop and expect a quality tattoo. Now, on the same token, this person cannot tattoo. Their entire...
So, sorry, here, that was going to be the core of my thing was, if your art is of value,
yes,
it doesn't matter who you are and what you do, right? If there's no value to it and you're not that much of a fucking artist in that field, eventually you're going to fizzle away anyways.
It's like showing up to the BMX or the motocross track with training wheels and screaming that these jumps are dangerous. Well, don't fucking be there.
There you go.
You know,
exactly.
you can't ride. Don't fucking be there. Don't go telling them that the whole track needs to be flat so it accommodates your fucking training wheels.
Yeah.
And this is a real interesting thing because I really believe this shame culture of like, I think what you're doing is oppressive. What the fuck? You're going to censor Gigi Allen. You're going to censor the Mentors. You're going to censor the Dwarves. You're going to censor Savage Henry. You're going to censor anything that you find offensive. All the comedians, all the artists that you find challenging.
Which is what the Christian right was doing all through the fucking 80s.
100%.
Who they'd be speaking out against right now.
The PMRC tried to fucking eliminate all of these people. The Christian Coalition, all of these groups, they said, you offend our morality. What about the children? We need to protect the children. Well, how is that any different than what the so-called progressive, intersectional, safe space individuals are saying? Yeah. This woman tried to say that this guy's portfolio is damaging to victims of abuse because it sexualizes women. If you are so damaged by an Instagram account, you need therapy instead of Instagram.
Yeah,
like
that's a lot of passing the fucking responsibility on everybody else for your own shit.
Yes, it really blew my mind.
And it's I think and a lot I don't know if it's related in any way, but I do feel it's also a lot of people live in that world where they think that is outrage, that is offense, that is gonna hold them down in some way, have also never like physically struggled in life. You know what I mean? Have never done a manual labor job where when you start to blister and you say, well, how do I not get any blisters? And they go, well, you don't. You're going to get blisters.
Or you
know
wrap yourself up to protect yourself to some degree.
They've never done those sort of things. They've lived in these worlds of politeness and courtesy and common sense, and we sit across from a desk and we sit in a classroom and we work in a shop and we handle this and that, but it's not in a place where you got to worry about losing a fucking finger or a foot or crushing one of your buddies when you're backing up or some of those real physical, real world fucking repercussions where you see that stuff, because they live in these worlds where that isn't a thing. And then the first time they have a real experience with that, well, then it
how
blows their mind. That's exactly it, right? And they don't have a real fucking frame of reference then for anything else, because you've never had that fucking experience. You've never felt that fuck. It was like I was teaching snowboard lessons for like the last 20 fucking years, not full time all the time, but on and off over the last 20 years. And I noticed in the last like 5-6 years of doing it, and I mean, I'm not trying to say kids today, but there's a bunch of soft fucking kids in this world.
Let's call them pussies. They're gender neutral pussies.
And it's you wouldn't believe how many times I had kids, like the first time we're doing a snowboard lesson is the first time they've ever felt their muscles burn. They're going, it's my legs, they hurt, something's wrong. And I'm going, well, it's just your muscles hurt because you're using them.
You haven't been victimized.
And they're like, oh, like you've never ran, you've never lifted, you never had to run a shovel for the afternoon. You've never done it. You've never done those things. Even the garbage is fucking too much. Or pushing a lawnmower is too much. And then when you do something that you have to be fucking physical, and it does take some fucking attention and balance and coordination, you're lost. And then you think there's something wrong with it and somebody needs to accommodate you. You wouldn't believe how many fucking 13 and 14-year-old kids have asked me to tie their boots. And I will show them on one, just in case you've never tied a boot before for some fucking reason. Here, now you know, and now you're going to have to do this, bud, because I'm sorry, you're too fucking old for me to be tying your shoes at this point. And I'm embarrassed for you at this fucking point if you've got to do that. You know what I mean? Like, how do you... 13 to 18 is only 5 fucking years. How do you go from not being able to tie your shoes to being an adult in 5 fucking years, you know?
Now, to be perfectly clear, 2014, when I went to Osaka, I went on a tattoo tour. I was scared shitless, right? Trying to navigate the Japanese subway systems coming from Saskatoon, small town where I can barely navigate the bus.
No public fucking transport. There's one bus system.
Yeah, there's a bus and it's in English, as opposed to a full-on subway system, which I've never used the machines to buy a ticket. How does this fucking work? Yep. Yeah. If you're from New York, you know how a subway system works. You can probably figure out the Japanese one. It's funny. My tour guide, she was like, this is pretty simple shit, Pat. You know? And I'm like,
Jeez, you seem like a bright guy.
Yeah. So she treated me like a fucking student. She's like, okay, you got to look for these landmarks. When you see these landmarks, you know to press this button to get off. It was kind of embarrassing. So I get that to a degree, you know. But the safe space idea of like everything needs to be made safe, and if I'm challenged by something, Japan doesn't need to change to make me safer. You know what I mean? I need to accommodate to the environment that I'm going into, and I wonder about this culturally a lot. Where
and that's what we all should do to the best we can.
Yeah,
and then those that can't need to be made accommodated for, and that was the transition we're going through, where those that can't weren't accommodated for. We didn't have wheelchair access fucking everywhere. Trans people couldn't just go into whatever bathroom they wanted to, you know? Mm-hmm. So now that we're starting to do that, it's almost like a fucking like, well, now we gotta go so far the other fucking way.
So I got an interesting scenario which you'll be able to relate to. It has to do with Propaganda, one of my favorite bands, but coming from a town which was a mosh slam dance town. And Propaganda was an aggro band. They played fast, they played hard. People wanted to jump up and down and mosh. But they didn't want violent dancing at their shows. So regularly they'd even say, hey, if this little kid can't dance in the pit, the show gets shut down. Or if the smallest women in the crowd can't dance because they're going to get banged around, we're going to shut this show down. Now I'm kind of up in the air. So should the little kids and the small, fragile people stand on the platforms in the back or on the chairs in the back and watch over the crowd? Or should they have a right to stand in that environment while everybody else who's been there forever moshing should stop moshing because the performer says, hey, I don't like that?
Yeah.
Really?
You just answered it.
Which one do you think?
It's
the
artist.
The
artist calls that. Because when you're at a show, if you're Gateway Festival, say, for example, kind of more of a hippie kind of vibe, there's lots of country acts and shit like that.
or Ness Creek or any of that
exactly.
stuff.
Somebody's playing some relaxing acoustic shit, and I get in there and just start throwing bows and slamming people around.
Yeah.
That's not the fucking place for this,
There's
because
an
that's
environment.
not what this artist is trying to build. And I think with propaganda, even though their music is of that, like, think of their lyrical content. As much as their music is of a world of aggression and fucking violence and all that it is, lyrically, they're so intellectually forward, they're so advanced, they're the opposite of much of the other shit I listen to, which crush, kill, fuck you, you know?
Okay, but they're coming to an environment that's dedicated to
But it's
aggressive
theirs, though. And it doesn't exist without the artist.
Okay.
So all the other artists
Okay.
can do that, and if you want to bring them into this venue, well, this is the art they bring into it, right? And I kind of agree with that, honestly. If that's what they want their show to be,
Well,
and you want that experience,
and I've
cool.
seen
And
them-
then if you don't, then you vote with your feet, right?
I've seen him walk out
Yeah.
on a gig where people insisted on moshing. They played 15 minutes, gig over. And I've seen one where the crowd reluctantly settled down. Now, the other side to this coin, to this debate, is what if a super aggressive, hardcore, metalcore band plays and they're like, we're down with crowd killing. We're down with spin kicks.
Yeah.
You punch people in the face, we're good to go.
See you later, kids.
Yeah, don't
That's what I'm
be
saying.
here. So should somebody...
That's the energy for that space.
That's not
at
a
the time.
safe space for me. You guys are toxic. Or is this a designated area for the people to express their consensual toxicity? I just shared on Facebook, what was it? What band was it? Come on, don't let me forget it. It was Sound and Fury 2010. What band was it? Oh my god. Buddy rides his Harley Davidson in the pit.
Oh, I watched that video you put up, yep.
Oh man, and people are like doing like spin kicks and like they do one does a somersault off his fender and then he pulls out and apparently does a burnout and the security started pepper spraying people and a big riot broke out. Now,
Classic.
who's to say you don't do that? You know what I mean? Look, don't be there. Don't be there if this isn't your bag, right?
I just experienced this firsthand actually this weekend. We had another little bit of a Dundurn shindig, so there was more mini bike shenanigans to be had. And at one point I was asked by someone who we were tenting on the inside of the barn that maybe if you got any pull with any of these assholes, you could get them to not ride their mini bikes through my tent if at all possible. And I'm like, this isn't really the kind of place where you can say things like that.
You might want to set your tent upstairs.
That's it. We got to move the tent then. If it's in where the mini bikes are going and where everything's going down and we're in the way, or the fire jumps out of control, or you don't want your chair burned or you don't want it that close, well, sorry, bud. I guess we got to move them then.
I guess you shouldn't come where the fires are 15
right?
feet high.
And and that wasn't exactly the answer the person wanted. But I mean, that's what that space is. That's what we were doing out there. You know what I mean? And I'm not gonna go and fucking be like, look, guys, we got to tone it down. Because it's
Some
like
people
well,
here think you're being toxic.
I'm uncomfortable and I want to tone it down. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go do my own thing on the other side of the thing. I'm gonna not engage. I don't fucking. You guys do your thing.
Vote with your feet. And
That's
if an environment isn't offering, well, I noticed as I got sober and I started working my program and being more into spirituality and meditation, certain environments just weren't my bag. Yeah. And I'm not denigrating those for the people that they are their bag.
Yeah.
Fucking A, do it. Have a great time. And I don't want to I don't want to harsh your vibe. I don't want to I don't want to come in there and be the staticky, grimy, I don't like this and you're all doing something wrong. Well, even because you're not. What you're doing is cool and what I'm doing is cool. They're just different things. Yeah. Apples and oranges, tigers and bears, or rabbits and bears, like there's just different animals.
Oranges and tigers. Bananas and orangutans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have a buddy, he has this quote and he says that ideas are living things. And they're almost like organisms. And if an idea is a stronger organism, it'll envelop and swallow the smaller ones. And then so if I come to you with an idea that makes more sense in your previously held ideas, you just naturally adopt that. It kind of overtakes the old idea, and there's no room for the old idea because you have access to this new thing. Yep. Now, if two people are conflicting and they're equally strong ideas, well, they have to agree to disagree and agree to be separate. Yeah. And this idea of this girl where it's like, this person's doing toxic tattoo stuff. Don't look at it. Don't go there. Yeah. Don't get tattooed.
Continue to create your own space. Continue to do your own thing. Continue to have your allies that are going to work with you on this, and continue to change the industry so it's not that anymore.
If that's necessary.
That's what I'm saying. If that's how it's going to go, if that's what needs to happen, it'll happen if you're doing it with positive intention. But yeah, as soon as you start to do that, fucking, I got to cancel everybody else because I don't like it. Shit. Well, it's karmic because you push them, they push you. Well, you're looking into their background. Well, now they're looking into your background. And
yeah.
now you're doxing them. You get doxed, and it's fucking yeah.
So I recorded like probably 15 minutes of individual videos trying to respond to this situation, and I had to delete them all because they started getting more and more amped up, and F-bombs started flying more and more. So I'm going to dial it back, and I'm going to address it to the point where tattooing to me, and I've got lots of books and reference material, I've dedicated, I think, 2/3 of my life to the tattoo art, trade, culture, and it is a rite of passage. My shop is named Rites of Passage, and it was a warrior art. It was a transition from child to adulthood. It was an endurance ritual. It was a powerful thing because it hurt, you endured it, and you came out stronger for it. These were symbols of strength, symbols of endurance. Now I see what used to be, and that gave it a sacred, profound art. It was like, sort of like, if you can't hack it, don't be here, just like the mosh pit. Now, to see an evolution of the bubble wrapping, where people, it needs to be painless. It's a high art. We need wine. It's a high, it needs to be, it does need to be clean. It needs to be sterile, but it needs to be safe. Everything needs to be safe. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Motorcycles don't need to be safe, right? Mosh pits don't need to be safe, and I don't think tattooing needs to be safe. You need to be tough. This is the difference. You need to be tough to be here, and if you're not tough, don't be here. Don't go reframing these warrior, like tribal ritual things as being toxic because you feel uncomfortable that you can't endure it.
Well, and those same people will frequently, criticize someone else for co-opting someone else's culture or watering it down, and it's like, well, what the fuck are you doing? There's a whole lineage of gnarly motherfuckers giving other gnarly motherfuckers tattoos, and then we want to water that down and make it something soft. And
it's already been watered down,
and because it's
the modern tattoo
because
culture.
Of money, obviously. That's the only reason, right? You would never do it. I want to make it accessible for everybody, so everybody can have what? Well, because I want to get fucking paid.
So you can have this meaningless symbol, and it becomes a meaningless symbol when you take away the endurance aspect of it. Can you imagine going in to a sweat and saying, "Excuse me, Mr. Elder, these rocks are pretty hot. I'm a little uncomfortable. Could you tone it down for me and my friend here?"
Yep.
No, this is our shit.
Yep.
Don't be here if you already. I'm not going to say.
Or start your own fucking sweat lodge then.
You're
whatever temperature you want down the road.
Mildly sauna, your sauna lodge down the way, right?
Exactly.
And I think
lukewarm lodge.
Lukewarm lodge. And I think there's plenty of that. These new age crystal rubbing, feel good. I put like a warm rock on your chakras, and you're gonna get aligned. If you need that safe space, there's plenty of that, and there's a market for it.
And it's good intention, and there's nothing wrong with it. But to erase the other side of it because it doesn't agree with your shit. Well, that's not fair to the people who that shit does agree with. There are some people that want to go into a toxic fucking... You want to hear black metal blasting when you walk into your tattoo shop,
Okay, there's people that are going to want... And there were, rest in peace, Gigi, people that went to Gigi Allen concerts because that's the environment they wanted to go into. Yeah. Gigi Allen...
They weren't fooled into thinking it was something else.
Who is this guy? Yeah. What's he all about? He threatened to bomb his last concert as a ritual suicide and take everybody with him. So, and you never knew when you were going to go. And same thing with the band Jism. The guy would one of his gigs, he pulled a pistol out and started firing into the crowd, and it was loaded with blanks. Nobody knew. Like, he was a maniac. There's some of this Japanese band, one of these Japanese noise bands. Buddy drove a bulldozer through the wall of the gig. Like, so there's certain artists, you know what you're getting into when you're gonna go. So you go to a Gigi Allen concert, you know that you're probably gonna get poop on you or blood. You might get punched, or the opportunity to attack the guy who's doing the punching and the screaming and the flailing naked on the floor. And that's what you're consenting to do when you go to these environments. And I'm getting so frustrated with these people saying, but you need to stop doing that, or we need to shame these individuals.
Well, and it's fucking insane too, because from the 90s, like I remember in the 90s, this was the time when it was like the resurgence of the 60s again, where it's like, we want to have more social fucking freedom. We want to have people like Marilyn Manson be able to go out and fake getting a blowjob on fucking stage and have that all happen. We want this going on, and it was applauded, and it was, this is freedom, and everybody on the right and everybody from fucking 20 years ago is going, I don't like this, but this is what the new world is. So we've gotten past that to where it's like, okay, well, you can do all that, but you just better not make it offensive to anybody. And it's like, well, no, that's how we got here. It was through being offensive.
Well, and I'm an extremist when it comes to art. I believe in the sanctity of art as challenging as it gets. I think fucking Marilyn Manson should be able to have a real blowjob on stage. If everybody's consenting to be there, and you know what you're getting into. I've been to ritual hook pulls where literally people are pierced with hooks and lifted up off the ground. And if you don't like it, don't be there. If you're going to be too triggered to watch that blood or the pain or any of that anxiety being dredged up, don't be there. Because a lot of people are working through their traumas through these endurance rituals. If your trauma doesn't allow you to be there, don't come. Go to therapy.
Well, and again, we do live in a world where, like, you get to pretty much 100% streamline what you take in for media and fucking any sort of input. It's not like the only thing we could all watch was, or listen to, was the radio and watch the TV, and there was 2 channels. Now you got whatever the fuck you want. So once again, the option of just going to see shit that appeals to you is more there than it's ever been before. Because again, that was the other problem, is like people would argue that, well, no, there wasn't any of this for us, and we only got any options. We got to try and we got to make these spaces. And it's like, okay, well, now there's a plethora of that. That's all you can do now, is have just what you want in front of you all the time.
Well, there's the above world and the underworld. Now, how far into the underworld do you want to delve, right? And that's like as a metaphor or as a social construct or as a societal construct or even psychologically. Joseph Campbell talks about it in The Monomyth or The Hero's Journey, where you've got... He was a cultural anthropologist. He studied all these different cultures, and we're talking like from the Africans to the English Arthur legends, to the Native Americans, to the Hopi Indians, and also contemporary modern culture like Japanese mythology. And this also applies to like Star Wars, Harry Potter, Hunger Games, where you have the hero, and the hero gets a call to adventure, and they leave their normal world, and they usually find a guide, and that guide takes them to a darker netherworld, underworld, where eventually they have to overcome and challenge. Through a series of challenges, they come across the big boss, which is usually the metaphor is the dragon. Either the dragon protecting a pearl of immortality, the dragon protecting the virgin princess, or the pile of gold. Either the hero is destroyed by the dragon or destroys the dragon, but either way is reformulated to come back to the normal world with this boon of this thing that they overcame. And that could be sobriety, kicking drugs, it could be going to the gym, it could be literally overcoming struggles with your father or with your parents. All of these are a metaphor, right? Now, that's the hero's journey. You become a hero by enduring this process.
It's by making everything bubble wrapped and fucking safe like that.
You never get the call to adventure.
Exactly. You've removed the struggle that builds you.
You're just a gray person. You're
Well, and
a
again,
non-player character.
That's the same thing with, just fashion culture of tattooing, where it just became like, well, no, everybody can just have one and it's fine, and you can work anywhere and have tattoos up your neck, and no one gives a shit anymore. And
and you got a local anesthetic, and it didn't feel like it. I
Which
walked in, I numbed,
nice,
I walked out, and I had a tattoo.
Yeah.
How is that powerful? Part of the tattoo culture that was powerful when I first understood that you went through needles for hours to get this thing, and that's nothing compared to, like, let's say the Maori tribe, where they would literally use the same tools they carved their canoes with. They would carve lines into your face and rub the soot in after and let you heal up. That's how they tattooed you, like chuk, 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 chuk. And or the Polynesians, where they would do the tapping, the tattoo tapping, or the Japanese, where they like literally they shove those needles into you. So what we do already have is a nice, safe, sanitized version.
Yeah, you got exactly what you've already done. Yeah,
is of these primal rituals, and so we've got a modern kind of primal ritual. It's very tame, but now they want it even more sanitized and more safe, and that's
then it gets to be, what's the value in it then, right? Is it just the
powerful
aesthetic?
anymore?
Is it just the fashion? Because a lot of times, I mean, there's amazing tattoos in this world, but I would almost pick none of these to be on a t-shirt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, lots of this shit is just like, it was what it was at the time. It existed when it did, for the time that it did, and I have my story for it and my memory for it and my whatever, but it's not like it's the most fashionable of fucking things.
Well, and it's like, it's a memento, or it can be a memento, it can be an ordeal, it can be, I went through this process, but either way, it should be powerful because it's got some inherent endurance with it. It's got an experience with it. And when you remove that, and it's a fashion accessory, how are you, like, these things are symbols of endurance. Like, I went through this process. Now you see somebody with a full bodysuit and you're like, holy fuck, man, you have like the pain threshold of a small horse. Yeah. And they're like, oh no, I didn't feel a thing, it was all frozen, I just walked out and I have this now. You're a fraud. Yeah. You're a fraud. Right. So these people want...
Well, compared to your experience, right?
Well, because compared to what the art was designed for, and that's kind of it, right? having a
I
Harley.
used to feel like that was like kind of waving a flag, right? When you seen somebody else that had a tattoo, you were like, oh, they must have at least some shit in common with me again, right?
They can handle some pain.
They've had those experiences then, at least, right? You know?
Yeah.
And then now it's like, well, no, I almost don't want to engage with other people I see that have a bunch of tattoos because I'm like, I feel like I'm gonna have nothing in common with you at this point.
And more, it is like that.
Yeah.
I like to say, I go to the gym or I go in public, and once upon a time, you'd see a person with a lot of tattoos, and you'd be like, wow, this person must have a lot of hurt in their past. Maybe physically, emotionally, whatever, and they're wearing their heart on their sleeve.
Yep.
And now it's almost like these people want to appear to have that. Like, it's appear to be this apocalyptic, edgy, don't give a shit about society. But the reason they're doing it is because they do give a shit about society, and they want to fit in.
Yeah, right. Fetishizing that outlaw culture, right?
Yes,
you
exactly.
See the outlaw style tattoos, the guys getting the gangster style tattoos across their stomach
Top
and shit.
button done up, bandanas. Model culture. The fact that tattoo models are a thing, and that these people are running out to get covered in tattoos so they can get modeling gigs.
That's wild.
It's happening. It's happening. And it's fucked up when I go to Sport Check and all their little advertisements of these people with yoga mats have like back pieces and sleeves, but I'm getting followed around the store because I'm actually that guy, and you're the toxic element. Anyways, so yeah, shame culture really fucking bugs me. We're living in weird times, I still fucking wear camo shorts. I guess I'm stuck in 1999.
Yeah, a little bit of Arrested Development there, yeah. No, I agree though, camo shorts are timeless. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Yeah, big pockets.
What can't they do?
Well, yeah, my brother was stopped at the border one time, and they started asking, so what's with the big camo shorts? Those pockets are pretty good for shoplifting.
Oh,
yeah, right? It's a criminal thing.
Never thought of that.
Yeah, well, thanks for the tip, buddy. Exactly. Yes. So, on Instagram, I'm noticing, and it's funny, I had to delete a bunch of posts because I apparently do more cool podcasts than I do tattoos.
Oh,
so
really?
My tattoo feed, which is at Horinawa, HORINAWA, in case you want to follow me. It was just like, it was like podcast, tattoo, podcast, tattoo, podcast, tattoo. And I'm like, oh, fuck. So I've just been deleting all the podcast ones and just like the most recent podcast I put up there, But I do more cool podcasts than I do tattoos lately, I think.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I guess. Well, no, I should be doing more cool work.
No, I'm a tattoo artist. Is what I do for a living.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't get paid for this thing I post everything about, right? My brother gives me shit about that. He's like, man, if you put the same amount of effort into your art and drawing and creativity as you did into these other avenues of creativity, be it martial arts or, when I was doing the bastard stuff a lot, or, the meditation and the hypnosis and the animism class and the counseling stuff, you'd probably be one of those honcho tattoo guys. But I can't just have one iron and one fire, I need to diversify because I don't understand the mindset of these people that's all they do is the one thing. Well,
I've often thought that anybody who can be like world champion at anything is a person who is deficient in probably many other ways.
Yes.
Because like to have that focus and to have that singularity of fucking vision where this all you give a fuck about is tennis. Mm-hmm. Like, well, a buddy of mine were talking about it yesterday with sportscasters and shit. It's like, like I can't fucking. He watches hockey, and I can't remember who's all on every team. And he's like, I don't know how the sportscasters do it. I mean, they got a team of people working for them. I'm like, yeah, but it's also that's their gig. That's what they do. They wake up in the morning and they just study who's coming into the fucking league and who's doing what, and that's all they live, breathe, and sleep because they're freaks about it, and that's why they're doing it. There's not. And that's hundreds of thousands of people doing it, right? It's a very select amount.
That's what launches people to the exceptional areas of their disciplines, whatever that discipline is.
That's like people getting worked up about Ellen not being a sweetheart.
Oh, really? I've seen a little bit about that, but I didn't get any of the backstory.
No, I guess there's, from what I understand, they said there's a real toxic environment backstage there, and like a lot of the producers and shit were kind of garbagey and like kind of like being sexual and shit with people, but I don't know if there was any sort of like assaults or anything. And the big thing was
there's a lot of grabbing.
It turns out that Ellen is
get over here,
Ellen,
predatorial Ellen,
squeeze that peen. She's that she was not as nice as she was on TV. That she's telling people to be kind to each other, but then she's nobody can make eye contact with her or whatever the fuck it was.
Don't fucking look at me.
But here's the thing,
Pulling
right?
The blue velvet.
Like everybody understands that's a character. You know what I mean? Like these people, everybody who's on fucking TV is playing a character. None of them walk around. Even the newscasters and shit don't sound like that when they're at fucking home. They're hanging out. They're real people. They're doing a character while they're on there. So when you find out who the person who does this character isn't that character when they're not on the show, don't be fucking surprised.
Just a second. I don't mean to derail. For Saskatoon people, Kim Coates is not an outlaw biker. Okay? When he shows up to
nice
town,
guy, actually.
just because he rides a motorcycle, do not blow so much smoke up that motherfucker's ass. He is an actor. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways.
Well, yeah, they're acting. They are actors. That is what they do. They create characters and then pretend to be them. Like, that's the whole fucking thing of this.
One of my favorites, and this is just the audio. Somebody recorded Christian Bale when somebody walked across one of his sets and interrupted one of his scenes, and he is the biggest cunt I've ever heard. Oh my god, he became my hero in an anti-hero kind of way. He's like, I'm trying to fucking work here. He's screaming, and I'm like, holy shit. I can relate to this, you know.
Yeah, no,
it's funny. Oh yeah, just as a bit of a callback. Oh man, I saw this video on YouTube, and the hero's journey that we were talking about. There's also an anti-hero's journey where a person goes and they separate and they come in contact with their ugly side, their own being the dragon themselves, the worst parts of themselves. And if they haven't gone through that, they haven't become an integrated human where they haven't realized their darkness and their grossness. And I think this is a very important thing because through my nervous breakdowns, a lot of these were me really having to come to grips with what a piece of shit I could be. Not necessarily that I always am, but like the elements of me that are the worst elements of me, and for very short periods of time, thinking that's who I really was, you know. And I think that's the anti-hero journey where you really have to look at your ugliness. And I love that where I'm like, oh, Gigi Allen, yeah, part of me is Gigi Allen, you know, or any of these bad guys, Christian Bale bugging out when people are like interrupting his work. I'm like, yeah, that's in me. Yeah, all of those horrible things are
what's
in me.
insane is it's usually not something you like about yourself.
No.
But it's almost an addicting feeling sometimes to be that powerful to fucking just tear somebody apart.
Yeah.
Holy fuck, really? You know, like
Bite
to
till your
really
teeth meet.
really make somebody worry. You know, like it's a powerful feeling, and I think you kind of get addicted to it like anything, and it's hard then when you start to get into it not to lean into it, because I find myself getting there sometimes where I'm like. I recently had to stop myself because I'd gotten frustrated with somebody and I was just about to turn around and just like unfucking load. And I'd already fast forwarded like 5 minutes in my head and like how much crying they were doing, you know, like
they're already crying. Yeah, I really need this.
It was going to be awful.
Kill blow.
And then I just stopped and I was just like, I just don't want to do that. I don't want to put that energy out there. I don't need to. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought about how like kind of pathetic this person was anyways. And then I'm like, well, what the fuck am I going to do to this fucking person who I already think is a loser? Then I'm going to tear them apart even more.
But I think that's because you've done that work. You recognize.
Well, because I've done that before. Because I don't know how many other times I've done
you.
That growing up. When you'd find a kill shot, and you're just like, ooh, this is it, fucker. Yeah.
I'm gonna decimate.
Yeah.
But I think that's a very, very important thing is to recognize the monster within us. And how many people go through this life either pretending it doesn't exist or being it and not thinking they are. What is it? I heard this thing. It's like nobody thinks they're the bad guy.
Fucking right.
And I'm sure even Goebbels and Hitler and all these people thought they were the good guys. And like if they had this moment of clarity when they're like, holy fuck, that's me?
Yeah.
I've done this.
And they even, a lot of times, those types would even know what they're doing is probably even considered evil by most sides. But their goal was righteous. The overall plan was like, well, no, this is what we're trying to fucking do. I get we got to do these terrible things to get there, but
not in the Nazis specifically, but like, isn't any war an atrocity? What actually happens in war, in like collateral damage, or even in consenting participants, it's atrocity. It's evil by any definition of the word. You're tearing people apart for the goals of like. Usually the rich and corrupt.
Well, it's usually to move imaginary lines on a map, or move resources from here to there for this time, and then back from there to here, and it's all shit's gonna shift around, and these people still don't exist, or they're missing parts,
and then they come home, and you know, so by any definition of the word, but like with framing, it's righteous. You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's where I got to in that, because again, like, I'm going to teach you a fucking lesson. You're going to talk to me like that? Okay. And then I'm like, well, again, who the fuck am I to teach anybody a lesson? Let's just stop there right now. And whatever, they'll learn it from somebody else if it's something they have to fucking learn.
If it's something they have to learn. I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about boundaries. You know what I mean? Then we can consider these national boundaries or individual boundaries or emotional boundaries. And I don't want to project my bullshit onto anybody else. That's me trying not to be an imperialist motherfucker. You know what I mean? I can say, hey, this is where I'm at. And if you choose to adopt some of that, that's cool. But I'm not going to tell you, you need to be sober. You need to be vegan. You need to do this. I'll be like, hey, this is me. That's cool. And if you're you, that's cool. Thanks for agreeing to disagree. You know what I mean? You do you, I do me. Now, how much of a right do I have to defend my boundaries? And I'd like to say I've got a firm edge. Oh no, I've got the, hey man, that's my boundary. No, that's my boundary. You're crossing a line now. I'm giving you a warning. Don't take any steps any further. Otherwise things are going to get ugly. Boom, it's ugly time. Now, I've got to... Boom, it's ugly time. And for a long time, it was like, oh, excuse me, that's my boundary. Boom, it's ugly time. Like, there was no real transition between there. And I need to have that gradual, like, you know, give or take. And
I think that's kind of like the difference between a wolf and a dog, too.
Yeah.
You say, like, once a wolf gets onto something, that's it. They're just going to go and do it. Whereas you can't call a dog off.
Well, yeah, but dogs are also really handicapped versions of wolves.
Well, aren't we just handicapped versions of our former selves?
Yeah, but that's... Or potential
Am I growing
selves.
or am I deteriorating?
See, and that's the thing. Is my potential self, am I just a handicapped version of my potential self or my past self? Am I transitioning from animal to Ubermensch, like the Superman? You know, where in that do we fall? And it's something I work on. Now, I've got some people that... And it's not an unreasonable attitude that if somebody really wants to cross your boundary and they feel that they can be a bully, you need to correct them in a way that they know that they should never, ever, ever do that again. Now, and it's not an unreasonable way of dealing with bullies. But at the same time, is the safe space cry bully a bully? Should they know? Like, should they be corrected so immediately and harshly that they never do it again? Because straight up, that chick, I could call her out for different reasons on the quality of her work. You know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't be tattooing. You like call-out culture? Let's critique you. Well, you want to critique this person for what's on their portfolio? Let me critique you for your portfolio. Yeah. Now, I don't want people necessarily to do that to me, but at the same time, they do it. Yeah. You know what I mean? People do critique my portfolio. I critique my portfolio amazingly harshly. I don't think anything I'm doing is worth anything. You know, I'm just like, I shouldn't even tattoo. Just throw these machines away. So, do you want me to hold you accountable to the same degree I'm holding myself accountable? Or the way that you're holding somebody else accountable? Probably not. So let's just try and be kinder to everybody. That would be my goal.
There's a way to handle that, eh? Like, if you're genuinely concerned in that situation, for example, you're genuinely concerned about these models being objectified, or you're genuinely concerned that this person's spreading it, like, then I feel like you engage with them and you get to know them and you figure out how to. If I knew somebody who I was genuinely concerned about was going to kill themselves, I wouldn't just have a bunch of Facebook posts about it.
Or you wouldn't call in the crowd.
Yeah, I wouldn't phone all my friends and like, guess what's going to go on? I'd go to that motherfucker's house and talk to them, try and sort it out, try and help them.
Ideally,
you know, if that's the point. Like, if that's the point of it is to do good. But if you just want to point and scream and look what I'm doing. Okay, well then you're not doing that for a good reason, right? You're not doing that for a positive reason.
So we talked about that guy. Somebody needs to pee.
Let's say beak.
Oh, okay. Well, just in a second. We talked about Buddy a few podcasts ago in the street world, who was getting a reputation for hanging around a bunch of minor boys, right? And I got hit on by him, but it was never non-consensual. So when I started hearing rumors about this guy being a reputation for being a pedophile and this and that and the other thing, I'm like, fuck, dude, you know? So I took him aside and I had a conversation. I'm like, hey, man, you know, you need to know that this stuff's going around about you, and you might want to examine that before it gets really ugly. And he's like, wow, thank you for your input. And I'm pretty sure he knew, and I was just the naive one in this situation. Yeah. But that was the step I took. It wouldn't... be rounding up a posse to go fucking find this guy and off him. And I see all this stuff happening online about we need to kill these people as opposed to understand them. Have we even figured out whether like this stuff is a sexual orientation, a consequence of trauma, or like a power fixation for these people that are abusing kids? No, we don't give a fuck. We just need to erase them. We need to fucking kill them. That's interesting, because who else is on the chopping block that you don't give a shit about understanding, you just want to kill? That's coming from an emotional thing where you don't really give a fuck. You just want to injure, right? I don't know. You want to take a quick break?
Yeah, sure. All right.
Go time.
Okay, so yeah, this episode of Bad Ideas, Good Stories is brought to us by Black Cat Tavern here in Saskatoon.
They do punk rock bingos on Saturdays. They got pizza deals and delivery. I hear they got some of the best food in town as far as, lowbrow punk rock version.
Mm-hmm. Their pizza's fantastic. And yeah, they actually just had live music here on Sunday. So they're a live music venue. And now that things are going, they seem to be one of the ones that's actually getting out in front of it. So yeah, if you like metal or punk or hardcore or hip hop,
Stand-up comedy, open mic nights.
pinball machines,
Yeah, check out
VLTs.
Black Cat Tavern.
Yeah.
On Broadway Avenue in Saskatoon.
Yep, check it out.
1, 2, 3. We're back. All right, just so yeah. It's interesting that all the QAnon people are so all about finding the deep state that they're going to tear apart and finally hold to justice, and now all of Trump's entourage are going to jail.
Right. No, I'd seen a funny meme about that. It was pictures of like Elizabeth Warren, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, and Trump. Nasty woman, nasty woman, nasty woman. And Ghislaine Maxwell. Well, I wish her well. Yeah. No, it's funny. It's funny. Well, I was just mentioning to Russ. I said I noticed Kellyanne Conway. I'm not sure if you're familiar with who she was, but she ran Trump's campaign at the end of it because he had 3 different campaign managers: Paul Manafort, Steve Bannon, and Kellyanne Conway. And Manafort, I think, is either still currently in jail or just got out because of COVID, but he's still serving his sentence. And Bannon was just arrested last week on a yacht off of the coast of fucking Maine.
Yeah, I saw that with the wall money.
Yeah, all that. We built the wall or whatever the fuck it was called. Actually, there's a great John Oliver that just came out yesterday about that. So if you guys check that out, fucking, he really goes into detail about how that whole wall scheme came together and all the different players. And it's gross. Like, it's a gross bunch of people, and it's exactly what you think. The whole thing's a big fucking scam.
It was just a hustle.
It's entirely a hustle. It made me laugh out loud at the one point. I don't know how much Arrested Development you've ever seen, but anyways, they have this scheme during like the 4th season or whatever the fuck it is, where they're going to build this wall and a border wall, and they have this scheme where they're driving around this fucking big circular tank with a sign on it that says, Bluth Building or whatever, and they're driving around in a big circle, making it look like it's lines of fucking just miles and miles of wall they're driving along, right? And it's just this big circle he's going in, right? So what these assholes did was they built a chunk of wall, which is, it's a big fucking fence is what it is, and on a chunk of donated land that wasn't even near where they were going to be building this stuff, and used that to raise more money, which they just embezzled and did whatever they want with.
See,
so
that's
it's like,
been...
there's 4 of them that are all going to, well, they're all charged right now and be going to jail for it.
Well, that's kind of like the calling card of the entire Trump campaign is like using Getty images and saying these are Trump supporters.
Yep.
And all
Everything's a
kinds
grift.
of stuff
It's
like
all
that.
a grift. Everything's fucking fake. His spokespeople, he's got the My Pillow guy for the fucking infomercials coming out trying to tell people that there's this new drug on the market that's going to cure COVID, and turns out that he actually owns a ton of stock in it, of course, and he's going to make a pile of money. People start buying into it, and it's obvious, right?
Yeah. The corruption at the highest levels blows.
Yeah, no,
my
the
mind.
wall thing's pretty wild, and the amount of money that's being put into it is fucking obscene, and where they're getting it from is obscene also. Like, it's not just that it was donations for people, like just like the NRA, which is going to be dissolved here shortly.
You know
all
what?
The, all
Maybe...
the NRA members are going to fucking jail. It's crazy. It's like there's a purge right now.
Maybe this is the perfect storm where people are communicating, people are aware, the people are asking, why are there billionaires? People are asking, what are they up to and why are they protecting each other? And they can't control the method of communication, so all they can do is try and dump disinformation in there to try and confuse them, like with QAnon and stuff like that. This QAnon stuff with the pedophiles freaks me out because these people are looking in all the wrong places and they're being steered to look in all the wrong places.
And dollars to donuts, my friend. There's a fucking Russian IP address at the end of all this.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, this
sure.
is the QAnon trying to claim to be some sort of high-ranking government official that's getting this shit out.
I saw this one meme, and it was a very valid one, which I liked a lot, because I think this pulls it away from that and puts it back where it belongs. There's a two-pronged on this one. But
You're giving me a double pronger?
Double pronger, you know? The one is like all these people talking about pedophile conspiracies, and it's got Will Smith saying, the Catholic Church, you know, more than, like, there's been more than enough tangible proof that these people are shielding and hiding.
I would say billions of dollars
Yes.
has been paid out by the church over the years to cover up that shit.
They got a COVID bailout. to the tune of, I think, $1.4 billion, and a large millions of it had to do with the payouts cover-ups to suppress and to basically wash under to dust under the rug a lot of the allegations of inappropriate behavior from priests. The other one is, why isn't Hollywood coming out to talk about the child abuse in like these major movie corporations and these major, you know, like casting directors and stuff like that, where
because they're still trying to hold on.
Yes,
because there's lots of these guys' jobs still fucking depend on
the
it.
people with
It's actually interesting about like what's going on in LA right now, because it's, I mean, like any sort of service industry and shit like that has been pretty much decimated with COVID. Everybody's sitting at home. Nobody's got jobs at the service level, and so a lot of the luxury shit isn't really happening out there. Movies are being postponed and put on hold, so people aren't working that are actors. There's comedy fucking clubs aren't open, so there's stand-up comedians where like that's one of the best scenes is, you know, LA or New York. There's nothing going on. And you got guys like Joe Rogan now who's fucking moving to Austin and taking his podcast, and probably everybody else who's got.
Well, there's a decentralization.
That's kind of feels like what's happening, right? And I think that there's going to be like there's already a group that's following Rogan.
These scumbags got nothing better to do but import children.
Well, and so they're starting to realize now they've been taken. Now that all the reasons you live in LA have been taken away, and you're still there. Then you're like, well, what the fuck am I doing here? I gotta drive everywhere super fucking far. Everything's really expensive. Everybody's kind of shitty. The homeless problem's fucking insane because everybody can just live here. You can just live. You can just lie in the street at night and you'll wake up fine. You'll never die from the fucking elements here. Yeah. So you can just be there. And then you got people that don't give a fuck and will rob people to get their heroin or whatever it is they're doing. So yeah, it's I could see it starting to be like the slippery slope of the end, where it's like, I mean, Detroit used to be a big, beautiful, booming city in the last 60 fucking years. Now there's huge swaths of it that are like burnt out and empty.
It's suburbia. It's no man's land. Like crime, drug gangs, wild packs of wild dogs, literally running through the streets.
So like, I mean,
attacking.
It could be that that's what happens to LA, because I mean, if because of the pandemic things slow down enough that people start going, well, you know what, we can't film here, but we can go to places in New Zealand or other places where they flatten their curve early. Exactly, where they flatten their curve early and it's maintained, and everybody's still doing the precautionary shit to keep this down. Well, then they're gonna go and film there just so they can fucking work, even though it's like, well, it's easier here, we get better fucking discounts on our taxes or whatever.
There's so many
center stages. Doesn't matter if you can't make the fucking thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I can see that happening where they start, it starts to disperse, and then maybe LA just becomes like some sort of weird, cheesy fucking vacation spot. You know, I don't know.
I've been saying for years that like Hollywood films, the Hollywood movie, it's a fucking dumpster fire. It's a washed up formula of chase, bang, shoot, explode, you know, and now it's to the point where they can't even come up with new fucking ideas. They're rehashing stuff from the 80s, from the 90s.
All of the biggest movies in the last, like, fucking, 15 years have been goddamn superhero movies.
Yeah, comic books and toys. Like,
you know what I mean?
Like, so what the fuck's going on with Hollywood?
There's not a lot of Citizen Kanes being made anymore.
No, there's no depth.
Nobody's cranking out a whole bunch of Gone with the Winds anymore.
And I even wonder about the movie industry so much. People seem to be going on to television shows and series a little bit more, some longevity, as opposed to like the big movie or series of movies is another one.
Doing it independently. And comedians even. Lots of new comedians now aren't chasing fucking TV deals and trying to go and get commercials and trying to do that shit. They're putting all their time into doing podcasts and doing shows.
That's a very good point, because I was thinking about that the other day. Like, because I grew up a punk rock kid, and when I wanted to get my opinions out, well, I sang in bands or I'd do a zine. Well, this fills all those needs. Our podcast fills all those needs. I don't need to sing in a punk rock band to have my opinions heard anymore. I don't need to spend however long to write some lyrics for a song. I could just have a conversation. And I've been thinking about that, where I know a ton of people that instead of watching TV or Netflix or, you know, watching movies or going to movies, they're like, hey, I listen to podcasts. You know, I can do it at work in a lot of cases. I can do it while I'm driving to and from work, commuting. I can do it, you know, it's just background. Yeah. And so I think we're kind of lucky. We're in a new media. We're nobody's censoring what we're saying.
Not a fucking thing.
Yeah, there's no overarching podcast like board that says you can't say this, like there was with the Canadian radio when Graham and I did the radio station.
Absolutely. Yeah, you still got to work by somebody else's program and on somebody else's schedule. And this is one of the things you can just do as much or as little as you want, and if there's value to it, people engage with it, or if you just like fucking doing it, I don't know. You put stuff that never has a view. If you still enjoy doing it, what's the difference?
So it goes back to that whole, like, if we're really pushing, let's say, a challenging agenda or a challenging content, maybe language or content or whatever, then I guess some service providers won't host you. You know, and that's the worst that you got to deal with, is that you just jump through the hoops and say, okay, we'll be hosted over here and host over here. Our podcast, we use Linktree, although I need to update, you know, some of the links where we can find us. But let's say one YouTube says, we don't like what you say, you're canceled. Well, cool. We've just moved all our shit over here now. Yeah. You know, and so it's almost like the last, or one of the last vestiges of free speech, where people can say, like, let's say hypothetically, we do say challenging things to the order and the systems that are in place, right? It's only so long that we're able to say it. It's like pirate radio in a lot of ways. And
well, and it's one of those things too. If you get popular enough and enough people, there's enough ears on you, then eventually that's when you draw that sort of attention where somebody's like, well, there's value in this because they have so many people watching them. Plus, then we have to figure out how to monetize that. And if we want to monetize it, well, then we got to placate some fucking investors.
And that's my issue.
That gets to be the thing. But guys like Andrew Schultz, like the does that Flagrant 2, and he's got his own podcast and shit. He's one of these younger comics just kind of really fucking leaning into it and just being like, fuck it. You know, I would never wait another fucking hour in a fucking line to go do an audition for a commercial. I can just do my own shit. I want to do a commercial, I'm doing a podcast. I'll find out who I want to be my commercial, and then I'm going to put it on my podcast. Like, they have total control over it. And it's like, and why would I give any of my fucking money away to anybody else to do any of this?
Well, and nobody can fire you when you're your own boss.
Fucking nice.
I think that's a huge deal. You want to know why Hollywood won't out pedophiles?
Yeah.
Because they can't. Because they're paying for everything.
Yep.
And because if suddenly they say, so-and-so from MGM is a creep, MGM won't hire you, and anybody they know won't hire you. You'll never work in this town. Yeah. And then when you depend on other people's money, then you are their slave.
See, that's one industry that needs more safe space fucking companies. You know what I mean? Like, I start having groups of like writers and producers and shit that are like, no, we're not working with people who are fucking questionable and shitty, and it's a time where we can do this now by banding together. So that was something that always kind of frustrated me, was like that there's always kind of like a lot of shitty parts for women in movies, but in my mind I'm like, why do people keep fucking taking it? You know, why aren't they writing their own stuff?
People of color
thing? Exactly, right? But it's also because everybody who's making all the decisions at the who gets cut and who doesn't level is white men for the most part. That's who was doing it, right? And because it was frustrating to me, because I'm like, why don't you just do that? But again, that's my place of privilege, where I'm just like, well, if I don't like something, I'm going to make my own thing, you know? And they're like, well, no, like, this is the industry, this is how it exists, and I have to do these things to keep having a fucking career in this thing, because there is no other way to work around it.
So exactly, like women's roles, people of color, for a long time, LGBTQ people, they were very typecast. If you wanted to work, you had to take one of these roles. You know, in a lot of ways, you had to show your tits in the 80s. You had to be a criminal if you were, you know, a black guy in an 80s, like, you know, cop film. Like, very seldom did they get proper representation. And it's interesting watching black-owned films, you know, black-produced films, where there's nuance and there's depth, and we're human fucking beings here, people, you know?
Yeah, right?
Now
it's a caricature.
But who's really running Hollywood? You know what I mean? And the world that I grew up on was molded by what Hollywood told me reality was. The same way we talked earlier about my social media accounts molding what my reality was. My reality was molded by Iron Eagle, Red Dawn. You know, the commies might come at any time and kill off my school, and I have to run into the hills and protect my brother. You know, like, these are things that we grew up with. Like, you know, Dirty Harry, or 48 Hours, another 48 Hours, all of these films that told
hilarious,
us,
by the way.
For a time and place.
I was in a bus rolled over 15 times.
Yeah, well, if you go back and you watch those old Eddie Murphy shows, you'll see by today's standards how fucking ass backwards some of that stuff was. And
it's of a time. Right,
well,
I think that's how you have to look at that shit, right? Like, even when I was like, oh, the classics, you know, Gone with the Wind, and I'm like, watch that shit now, it seems hokey, you know what I mean? But
or outright racist.
Well, there you go,
right?
too,
You know,
yeah, right? But yeah, I don't know. I think that's how we got to kind of look at that shit. Make stuff that's of the time, and enjoy what's of the time, and look at it with that mindset. Don't look at it as a 2020 fucking vision. Look at it as, it was made in 1988. Look at it through 1988 eyes.
But are you looking at through 1988 eyes, or are you looking at through a dictated version of what 1988 was represented as?
You trying to incept me?
Well, no, really, because you can look at like what do they call them? Like movies like Dolomite or Jackie Brown, which were like black folks putting out black movies for black folks. Were they? Or were they representative of a community? Like, hey, they're directing, they're acting, they're writing their own language. It's like, yo, pimps are fucking badass. Well, what do you mean pimps are badass? That interrupts my worldview because, yeah, white Christian fucking representation thinks that this is bad. Everybody's consenting. There's a sex work. Now it's sex work. But back in the day, well, that's a bad thing. But pimps are fucking badass. You have to be a motherfucker to have 5 women willing to fuck to support your ass. Like, Jesus Christ, Pimps are fucking badass. And I'll be a white guy to fucking say it, And so you watch these movies made for the people, by the people, and they're talking raunchy. They're talking like, what pristine society would consider guttural or rude.
Well, we just saw it last fucking week with the wet ass pussy.
Yeah,
hey, we just saw it happen once again. I can't believe these saucy black women are out here talking about fucking grow up.
And in 1913, I saw somebody share, or maybe it was 1930, it was this blues woman. She's like, I've got something under this belly waiting for you. I'm going to fuck you all night. And I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. But that was like, what, like almost, 100 years ago. Yeah. And like back in the day, well, those people over there, it's always been there. Yeah. Just you didn't want to hear it and you want to suppress it. But when you actually get into listening to blues, hip hop, rhythm or R&B, any of that stuff, and you hear the voices of what's going on the street, you're like, oh, I get it. They're doing their thing, I'm doing my thing. Or you listen to oi music or punk music or metal music, you're listening to the voices of the underground, the sounds of the underground. And I think that that's very important because on a root level, we're all talking about the same shit. Mm-hmm. And the people up here, they want to censor what's going on down here. We don't talk about that. That's low class. Well, guess what? Low class is making up the base of the fucking pyramid here, motherfucker. And we're starting to realize who's at the top of that pyramid, you creeps.
And that's that, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, in every sense of the fucking word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exploiting. I got in a bit of a debate about the working class. Okay, the working class left versus the privileged academic elite left, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got all these people that have been to university and they've got their theory degrees, whether it's political theory or gender theory or critical studies theory, and then they come down and they swoop into the lower levels and they're like, we're here to educate you on what you're doing wrong and how you need to be, and I'm like, really? Because I'm a progressive dude, but I work for a fucking living. You know what I mean? And I'm buddies with people that work for a fucking living. You don't. You had the extra $50,000 to go sit in a university and in a dorm and to learn all the theory about what needs to change in the world without actually being in the fucking world. I'm friends with junkies. I'm friends with people that died from ODs. I'm friends with people that have died from violence. Who the fuck are you to roll into my world and tell me how I need to be more progressive? It's sort of like these privileged echelons of the academia want to come down and tell us all how we need to improve our little world.
Well, it's the missionaries again, right?
Yes.
But instead of religion and Jesus saving them, this is their intelligence and their education is going to save you.
Their theory.
I'm going to come down here and explain to you how the world works. And
fucking missionaries.
And now you'll know. And it's,
dude, you just nailed it on the head. I'm going to remember that so much. Fucking missionaries, because that's all they're doing. They're swooping in with their books and
their self-righteousness. And again, it could be good intentions. I don't know that there was ever a missionary who was a nun who was ever like, I want to go here and spread Jesus for evil.
Residential schools.
Well, exactly. That's fuck me. Jesus Christ.
There's
that's a goddamn nightmare.
Yeah. They're those people. Yeah. And you know what? That's just it. So these upper academia, these echelons that want to run, they don't want to help people. They want to run the show in the new order. Yeah. They don't want to be on the streets and give up.
And best for you a lot of times. We want the best for you is usually how to make you more productive. How do we keep you being a really smooth moving cog in the machine? Mm-hmm. What's the best for you? And if it's
I'm a manager. I'm not a worker. You say, cool, buddy. Here's a wrench.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the revolution I was talking about. I'm the guy who tells you how you need to go into the streets and riot.
Yeah.
I'm giving you all the literature. I'm not telling you. I'm not going to be there. I'm too important to go to jail.
Yeah, I'm the one who understands what's happening.
I'm the manager.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just it.
I'm the manager.
Well, man, and so I'm sitting here, and all of a sudden this song popped into my head, and I've got the fucking lyrics here. It's Cockspar from back in the day. It's Watch Your Back. It's like everybody's talking about revolution. Everybody's talking about smash the state. It sounds to me like a final solution, right wing, left wing, full of hate. Because we don't want to fight just because you tell us to. So watch your back when you attack, because we might just turn on you. And I think that's fucking where I'm at. You know what I mean? I'll decide what I believe in.
Yeah.
And you know what? In my heart of hearts, I know right from wrong. I don't need you to roll down and tell me that I'm being toxic because my version of equality is different than your version of equality. I hang with who I hang with. I talk with who I talk with. It's not you. Because you're from the fucking privileged echelons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The fact that the F word, it's offensive.
Yeah.
The F word's offensive? Well, guess what? Reality's going to be offensive because I got a whole bunch of offensive to show you. You know, like Jesus Christ. Yeah. So that
Well,
really...
and like, and you and I have both had to interact with people on a personal level who do not. They're the opposite end of that spectrum. They're as Neanderthal as they fucking come.
Oh,
you know,
yeah, real toxic
and
individuals.
You got to learn how to fucking navigate with that shit, right?
That's actually very valid.
And a lot of times when those people do finally come into contact with someone like that, they don't even know.
It's a monster.
It blows their mind that someone can talk to them like that and act like that. You know, and in my mind, I don't engage with that kind of person because I know how they react. I've engaged them before and had this. You know.
Okay, I have a good buddy, and you know him. A bunch of our friends know him. Came to get tattooed the other day, and him being him, and like maybe 270 pounds of him, he's sitting there. Fucking Obama, they put a nigger in charge down in the fucking States. In the middle of my tattoo shop, in the middle of a tattoo where my brown buddy is tattooing next to me, tattooing a gay client.
Sure, was this recently?
Yes, it was like a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
It was what 12 years ago he was elected?
Jesus Christ, but he's still,
behind,
he has the opportunity to drop an N-bomb in public though, because he's going to be that guy, right? And I'm like, look dude, don't. And he's like, what fucking this piece of shit down there, he ruined it. And I'm like, this isn't 1982. You can't fucking do that. You gotta dial it back. Yeah. And I'm like, am I gonna get punched in the head for this? Yeah. You know? And he's like, well, whatever. And afterwards, I tried to explain to him in rational fucking terms. I'm like, man, this is a business. You know, I could get written up on Yelp if I don't fucking check you. You know what I mean? You and me have...
Let alone, that's a shitty, idiotic thing to say.
It is a shitty, idiotic thing to say, but at the same time, I understand what you're trying to say versus the words coming out of your mouth. Yeah. You're being as insensitive as possible in order to get your point across, because you're that tough guy that takes no shit, and I don't give a fuck what you think about. Yeah. You can't be that guy in public anymore. You know what I mean? And,
well, and in my mind, tough guys do give a fuck about what everybody else.
Oh yeah.
You don't intentionally fucking hurt somebody if you're a real tough guy. If you do it on purpose, you're a fucking bully. I've never met a bully who's a tough guy.
Oh, look at you!
You know what I mean?
Look at you!
I've never met one who is, and every fucking bully
they
I've ever
front
met
like tough guys.
all hate bullies. You ever ask them, "What do you?" I hate fucking bullies. I don't let nobody bullying me. But you just do it every other fucking hour out of the day.
Yeah. Well, do they? Because I don't like bullies. And as soon as I realize that somebody's a real bully that likes to victimize and hurt people that can't protect themselves, they are a write-off piece of shit in my books. And I've been in these environments where a nice kid comes up and he's just a little too drunk and too friendly and he's a little too touchy, and all of a sudden, wham, and his face gets smashed open. That kid was just being friendly, dude. Yeah. And the kid comes up, hey man, I'm sorry for whatever I did, and wham, and he gets smacked again. I'm like, you're a piece of shit. I don't fucking want to be around you. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want nothing to do with you. And that's a write-off in my books. You know what I mean? So these people that are like, you're a toxic individual because you talk fast, or you talk over people, or you take up space. I'm like, do you want me to introduce you to toxic individuals?
That's our frame of reference, though, right?
You know,
again, they've never had that experience, because if they truly had, they would never think that was a thing to bring
people
up.
Like that are real.
Yeah,
they're real.
Yeah.
Like, and I kind of wonder about this where, and from my vantage point, I've never had to hang out in an urban environment where people are really predatory in order to survive, where they will jack your ass for anything you got. Nice watch, my watch. Nice shoes, my shoes. So these progressive ideas, these lofty progressive ideas on how we're going to fight crime and like the marginalized individuals and all of this stuff, I think they're removed from what actually happens in a lot of these environments where there are real predators, there are real bullies, there are real toxic people that you've never engaged with, you know, even in the communities that you want to protect and to support and to represent. Like, let's say Black Lives Matter, they've never had to deal with a real hardcore black gangbanger. And just like they've never had to deal with a real fucking outlaw mean biker or a real fucking predatory skinhead or any of that stuff. And when they actually do bump into those dudes, they're like, hey, you're my next prey. Oh my God, where's a safe space for me? No, there's no safe spaces in there. You know what I mean? Like when you meet real jailbirds, people that have been institutionalized in these systems, fuck, they're monsters now. They've been monsters. How do you reform a monster that doesn't want to be reformed?
And again, there's power in that too, right? Having people know you're a monster and get addicted to that. Fuck, we were just talking about something similar to this on the weekend. Fuck, it's a perfect time to have a total brain blank as we're in the middle of a fucking conversation. What were we just talking about?
We were talking about bullies and the gangbangers.
Here we go. So Buddy's telling a story about how he's got this buddy who lives in Calgary who's this like Viking of a fucking man, and he said like they're all at this pizza place late night, this big fucking line. And he just walks right to the front of the line, buys all of the pizzas in the fucking store, and then turns around and goes, what the fuck are you guys going to do about it? And they all went, yeah, okay, and turned around and left. And he took all the pizzas and fucking left. And then, like, yeah, it's funny how we live in the future, but every once in a while, all of a sudden it's caveman times for 20 minutes
Might makes
just
right
in this
when
room.
it really boils down to it.
And that's it right then. That guy just decided, you know what, and the fucking, what's the shop order going to complain that they got all their pizzas bought? You know, he jumped to the front of the line. I don't know, he paid for all of them, you want me to say. Well, it's not fair and it's not right. Yeah, you're right. There was a line.
Up with him.
But these are also imaginary rules you guys all agreed to, and I guess that guy didn't agree to them. So now that he hasn't agreed to your imaginary rule set, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. You're not going to do anything about it because you're not going to get in a fucking fist fight over a pizza.
Yes.
I myself, actually, while telling this story, was like, but I will because I have gotten into a fist fight over a sandwich once, which I was entirely wrong for taking. I had stolen it. We were playing a show in some big like community center kind of thing, and down the hall from it was this like hockey wind-up party. So I went down there and they were having like a midnight lunch and doing like a slideshow. So I went in there and made this big fucking sandwich and started walking out. And then these 3 hockey players jumped me and we had to fight for a fight over the sandwich. We were yelling at them. I'm like, you guys think I won't fucking fight you for a sandwich? And we did. Yeah.
So your story, the pizza story, reminded me of another one of my stories. I used to run a dancer agency. In this dancer agency, we did stag parties, and we had strippers, basically, right? And this guy called me up, and he's like, hey, man, I want to book your agency. I want, like, a few dancers. But just letting you know, these are shot callers for a prominent street gang in town. And I'm like, well, as long as you're going to be there. He's like, yeah, I'll make sure everything's chill. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So I'm trying to figure out, because I know some of these guys, I'm like, how do I engage with this? I'm going to bring a security. And I've got this guy I know, he's like 300 pounds, power lifter, tattooed head, you know, like tattooed down to the knuckles, like down to his cuticles. He's like pretty hardcore looking dude, and he's big. And I'm like, I could bring him as extra security, or fuck it, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to show up by myself, trust this guy with the dancers, right? And so I show up by myself, and I walk in, and the room, half of the room, are bigger than the bouncer that I was going to bring. So I'm like, I think I made the right decision here. And so these guys are all gangbangers, like straight up drug gang, like the shooters, like they're involved with like real prison shit. And so the party starts going, and one of the top guys, he's really on one of these girls to get his phone number, or to get her phone number, and she's like, hey, you need to tell this guy to back up. And I'm like, okay, so I have to tell the buddy that you can't get the girl's number. He's like, why not? And I'm like, well, you know, that's our rules. Like the girls don't give any of our clients numbers. And he's like, well, you know, I'm not involved with this anymore. And I'm like, well, yeah, I know you're not involved officially, you just got out of prison, but like even a retired union boss has pull with the union, let's just be honest. And he starts laughing. He's like, okay, no problem, so how can we fix this? And I'm like, well, you give us your number and she can take it and she'll text you if she feels that she wants to. He's like, okay. Yes. I'm like, all right, that's
Jesus
cool.
Christ. You have to teach him how to be a human being for a second.
Little
there,
bit,
hey? Like,
yeah. And I gotta navigate how this is, because I'm
he's in the fucking like caveman times version of this. He's got a rock over your head about to smash it. What do you mean? How do we fix this? I want that thing. Hey, and you're like, well, here's the thing.
Right.
Maybe you could just give her your number. Hey,
yeah.
All right, rock down. That's fine. You know.
So then we're like, and our rules when we did these parties is you can't touch the girls unless they give you permission. So this one guy's getting a lap dance, the groom to be, and he starts slapping this girl's ass. I'm like, hey man, you know, You can't really be doing that. That's the rules. And he's like, I get it, Pat. I've known you a long time. No problem. I respect you. But really, what the fuck are you going to do? And that's just it. I literally am thinking, well, I do have a pocket knife. I could
like stab you,
sewing machine my way out of this room, you know. But that's all I really had. Like, I would get killed. And all of these dancers would just be next, right? But luckily, a fight over some random debt stuff happened in the corner, and we were able to get the girls out, and we just fucked off, right?
Yeah.
And that's just it. In these environments, might makes right.
Yeah.
What the fuck would I do? If they decide I'm going to do this thing to you and you can't defend yourself, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
And I think people forget that about reality a lot because we're living in a civilized society. You know how might makes right in a lot of reality? You have to call the cops when things get heavy, and the cops have reserved the right to use a gun to kill people.
Mm-hmm.
And without that, that border,
Yeah.
you don't have shit. You can't ever threaten somebody with something that you don't have the ability to follow through on.
Right?
You can never say or else if there is no or else. And I think people forget that all the time. I get in debates with these like lofty moralists that say might makes right is such a fucking throwback. I'm like, but when you remove the rule of law, that's all that's left. This rule of law, these imaginary structures that keep us all polite and respectful to each other, you take those away with the one guy that steps in front of the line and says, I'm doing this thing. What are you going to do? Watch you.
Yeah.
Watch you.
Yeah.
So,
whereas I'm a pull the pin, bitch. I'm not trying.
right. Yeah.
Let's go. I don't have good evolutionary fucking ability. I'm not like very much for self-preservation in those situations.
I'm getting better,
Yeah.
but that's just it. You need to have that within you, that anti-hero within you,
Yeah.
which is willing to be that monster. And I think you need to come to grips with that monster because there's real monsters in this world. And these lofty idealists, these safe space bubble wrap people, I don't think they've ever encountered anything close to a real monster.
Yeah.
They think the police are monsters.
Yeah, right? And I mean, not to say they don't do shitty shit, but I mean...
Until they run into Ted fucking Bundy.
Yeah, eggs. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. and I
or
think...
the Golden State Killer. Who was a cop?
Okay.
Yeah.
Or a real fucking predatorial gangbanger of any color, any race, any creed.
Yep.
When you run into a real fucking predator, you're gonna really wish that you had somebody or something to protect you from that. And I think people forget about that all the time. That like, just because something offends you doesn't mean it's really injurious.
Yep.
Just because your feelings are hurt.
Offense is not injury.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
there's real
Injury is
fucking
injury.
predators out there. Yeah. Calling the guy out who hits on his client is different than calling the guy out who's actually literally abusing people in this community, the tattoo community. So, anyways,
It's fun talk.
yeah. Next week, if we get a chance, I had a whole bunch of research set up here. I want to get into declassified fucking government, conspiracies, quote unquote conspiracies, like Operation Paperclip and fucking MK Ultra and all kinds of
I'm
shit.
quite familiar with Operation Paperclip.
Oh man, I've also got Operation Stargate, where they start getting into remote viewing and basically government-sponsored magic ritual stuff, like weirdo shit. So I'll rewrite this in a way, and I want to get into it declassified next week.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'll try and grab
So
some shit to that.
we'll focus
It's,
on conspiracy.
Conspiracied up.
Yeah.
What else? One thing I wanted to talk about. I don't really have anything much to add to this, but just how do you quit your job? When do you quit your job? Hey, should we talk about that? So I'm right fucking there, man. I'm done. I don't want to do this fucking thing anymore, and I don't know.
Hire
How about
Dusty
you, like,
to do some comedy, motherfuckers.
Yeah.
How
About you? Like when you fucking took the plunge to just like I'm gonna fucking run my own shit.
I really think you just need to establish any type of hustle that you can do on your own, that you can make that side money enough that you can cover bills, and just balls deep, go for it.
Well, see, I feel like that's my problem with even doing this. Like, I put nothing on Patreon. I haven't done any of that because it's like when I do my regular job and I get home, I'm like, I'm fucking tired and I just want to sit still for a bit. Or I get band practice or some other shit, right?
But that band can be monetized. This podcast
that's the
can
thing.
be
And I just have to
monetized.
put my time into figuring out how to maneuver those things.
Man, I got dancers calling me up really on my case to start up an agency again, and I just don't have the network of like drivers and security and like all that stuff to make it work without it being a headache for myself, because I would be dragging all the energy from running one hustle to my tattoo shop and all of this anxiety I'd be taking out of my tattoo people, which would also be affecting my relationships. So being a hustler, trying to get that little here, little here, little here. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I'm lucky that the tattoo shop is a main income for me, and that I have that, because otherwise I'd be like, right now I'd probably start doing the dancing again. I'd probably do the counseling, martial arts, meditation, all of these, just like $20 here, $20 here, $20 here. But the dancing agency was a good one. So you got to figure out what hustles can pay. That's just it, and set those up.
Lean into those hustles.
Whatever they are. Ideally legal.
That's kind of been my
legal
goal
hustles.
For a while, was like trying to figure out, I mean, that's everybody's goal, right? Figure out how to do the things you love and get fucking paid for it, right? And just make that what you do all the time. And I know for much of my life, when I would try to do that, it was like try to make it the main thing, try and do it with one thing, and that's what's going to do it. But now, as I'm getting older too, I'm like, well, fucking, maybe I just need to diversify my portfolio a little bit, like you said, all these different side hustles. Like, the snowboard instructing is something that I can do until my legs don't work anymore, and I fucking love doing it, So there's like, if my fucking life was making people laugh and singing songs and teaching snowboard lessons, I mean, what fucking gets better than that, man?
Yeah,
you
right.
know?
Well, COVID was a lesson for me, because we were shut down for 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to come in contact with people.
Yeah.
How am I making money other than that?
Yeah. Your whole thing is deep contact with people.
It's very intimate.
You need to get literally under your skin.
So like the hypnotherapy thing is cool, because once I get the computer set up, I can do recorded counseling sessions. I could do recorded scripts, talking people through, give them something to listen to over and over again. You just pay me and pick it up on Dropbox. That would be one angle on this. Monetizing a podcast would be a nice angle. I don't need to, but it's a nice option. Writing would be another one. Teaching the martial arts, teaching kettlebells, doing the meditation classes, teaching the shibari, the rope tying, the kink stuff. I do all of that stuff, but I don't advertise it. So that's the other element, is you need to hustle and get that advertising.
I guess that's maybe the next step, hey, is like the really leaning into the making it known that you do this, and then trying to actively engage with people.
Kijiji business cards, cell phone number. That's my formula for any business I've ever done in the past. The ones that worked and the ones that didn't started with a phone number and business cards. Sure. Now, how do you get those business cards in as many hands as possible? That's it. Friends, family, whatever. Call this number. Call this number. Call this number. Call this number. Now, running the dancer agency, that bit my ass a couple times, because we go to the club with 2 or 3 dancers. Any girl that was dancing like a stripper, those girls are handing out cards. Oh, come meet my boss, Pat. And then I started getting feedback. You gave my daughter a fucking card at the bar. And I'm like, well, your daughter's dancing like a stripper at the club, So you tell me,
That's pretty funny.
Maybe if she wasn't working the pole so hard, I wouldn't have offered her money for it. You're like, fuck, guy.
Well, what's your wife doing then?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, clearly she learned it somewhere.
Oh, yeah, that's another.
Or your mother. I don't know how far up the family tree this thing goes.
Right? Yeah. So that's the deal. So as long as you have a phone number and a business card, bang, bang, bang. Yeah. Even contractors could take extra hustles on the side. Russ being a computer guy, he could take extra gigs on the side, make that extra cash. I think that's the angle, and I think.
Well, I think finding even if you don't have any sort of a talent, finding things that you can do that other people don't want to. That's another way. Cleaning houses,
hired
and shit
muscle.
Like that. Yeah, hitman, assassin.
Oh,
Yeah, coyote, I believe it's pronounced.
I could smuggle you into Fort Mac. Well, I know a guy who just took a laboring job. He waited a while, but he got out on Fort Mac as a laborer. And, and that's all. It's shoveling. Like he's getting paid rig money, oil sands money for shoveling. It's like unskilled, and eventually they'll train him in whatever direction he wants to go in.
Sure.
So there's work. It's just a matter of if it's going to be.
Well, that's my problem. Is I don't want to work anymore.
Yeah,
I don't want to do a job anymore. Yeah, I want to just fucking do what I want. I guess, and that's just kind of on me.
No.
But again, maybe talking about it like this in front of
manifesting it into the universe.
I have to do it then, right?
We should light some incense into it.
Light whatever you want, man.
20-foot fire.
Slow you down.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Universe, hear my call.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love basking in the glory of a good fire.
Well, and that's the thing. That's part of my whole trip where doing the animism course and ceremony and hypnotherapy, and I'm going to be doing into taking another course of psychology of animism, which is because the guy's a clinical psychologist that's teaching this course, where we teach people how to do personal rituals for enacting change in their life, right? And teaching that as a course, right? Where how to develop your own power rituals, and I think that'd be cool. Yeah, that's one of my next hustles. That's actually, I think, my end game. Where even in the kink community, these endurance rituals, rites of passage, tattooing, fire walks, all that stuff is all personal ritual for personal transformation. I think that's going to be my direction for my next whatever. Yours being, comedy.
Well, I kind of want to lean into fucking just being the better parts of myself. You know what I mean? And that's usually what it is. And like that's an energy that I love to carry. Is like making a whole fucking room full of people laugh is one of my favorite things in the fucking world. And like, man, this weekend that making somebody laugh so hard that they vomit is definitely top of the list for me. And it happened this weekend with our previous guest Mitchell. I mean, he had a whole throat full of beer when it happened, and he laughed. It was out his nose and his mouth, and it was just a pure stream of foam.
See, to me, I'd like to videotape that and sell it to the right market.
Right? Right.
That's another angle on my things that I like to do.
Yeah.
Boy puking.
Somebody's getting a boner over this somewhere.
Yeah. Well, boners, interest, weird curiosities.
Yeah.
So I think those hustles are something that anybody can really market. Unfortunately, the porn industry in Saskatchewan is pretty fucking tame. You'd have to go to Montreal or Vancouver to really make any money in the adult content. But that's something else I do, right? So it's just I wear my heart on my sleeve. That pervy heart.
Heart on your sleeve and very rarely pants.
My heart on my sleeve. So next week we're gonna do this again.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Love you, bro.
Love you as well.
Boop.